Hmm. So Jesse Waters reading through this latest Trump indictment live is just pure gold. It is pure gold. Let's take a listen to it here on the Morning Buzz. Good morning. I'm Kat Peterson. I'm so glad that you're joining me. You can text in at 309-451-9299. You can see me live in the studio on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter. I'm on all of the social medias. Be sure to subscribe and follow. Jesse Waters, this is pure gold. Let's take a listen.
Impaired the federal government from functioning. Isn't that literally the Republican Party platform to reduce the ability of the federal government from functioning? And then they say it's a crime to ask Pence not to certify? I wonder if Pence would agree that that was a crime. Apparently, the campaign managers told the defendant, Donald Trump, he had a 5 to 10% chance of winning these challenges, but he still fought on. The indictment said, how dare he? With 5 to 10% chance, I wonder what the guys in Vegas would say. You now have suspicious activity in Philadelphia, Detroit, and Arizona and Nevada. They're going to have to litigate suspicious election activity in all of those states. They're going to be presenting evidence. The defense is going to be presenting evidence. And then the prosecution is going to have to knock that down. We're going to relitigate all of these deep blue Democrat districts over the entire country in court in 2024 in an election year. That's really, do you think that's healthy for the country, Jonathan Turley? And do you think that's a road that Democrats want to go down to defend the integrity of Philadelphia's election security? And then they're saying, Trump said the voting machines weren't secure. Again, we're going back to voting machines at trial, in court, in an election year. We're going to bring in voting machine executives who explain everything's fine, and then they're up on cross-examination. We're going to go through that again, Jonathan Turley. And then lastly, they're saying lying about an election is illegal. Well, then Hillary, lock her up.
John Kerry, too.
Lock her up. Hillary needs to be locked up. I mean, does anybody remember that she was the one who was sitting there denying the 2016 election, saying that it was stolen, that the Russians, they stole it? Lock up Hillary. John Kerry, too. The indictment reads like it was written by a deranged college freshman perpetually furious that Trump ever became president. I'm telling you, this indictment is ridiculous. Even if they indict Trump 100 times, even if they indict him 100 times, we'll never forget that Joe Biden is the single most corrupt and vile occupant of the White House in American history. Like, he is the most corrupt and vile occupant. In the White House. We'll never forget. We're never going to stop. We will be relentless until the big guy is removed and brought to justice. We'll get to the indictment here on the Morning Buzz, but I have so much to get to today. We've got Chris Pratt. I saw this on Twitter yesterday afternoon, and I was like, I've got to share this with you guys because I was very upset, and I know you were very upset about the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, that whole debacle at the Dodger Stadium. And Chris Pratt, he's just shining his light so bright at this Dodger Stadium on Faith Night. So it's a Christian family faith night. And he says, Jesus has been after me. And I'm going to share that audio clip with you from Chris Pratt, who spoke at the faith night. Next, another little person goes viral after, having this anti-Disney rant about canceling dwarves from the woke film Snow White. And this little person, she's so funny. She says, is this their woke spin on this? They're having the one dwarf. So she's upset that they're not using dwarf actors. And this isn't anything new in Hollywood. There was dwarf outrage when it came to the Oompa Loompas and Willy Wonka. So we're going to get to that because I find it interesting. The whole cast is like, they casted Snow White as some sort of Latina woman. All of the dwarfs, the 7 of them, one of them is Peter Dinklage, who is a dwarf. And then the other 6 are like I don't know, like diversity hires, gay, different, all kinds of different sexual orientations and races, right? So they were trying to, make the film as diverse as possible, but they refused to actually cast dwarves in the dwarf character. Like it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So we will be talking about that later. Vivek Ramaswamy blasting Joe Biden's corrupt um, indictments, the corrupt feds over this Trump indictment. He says that the true cause of January 6th was this pervasive censorship. Now, he said this before, and I agree 100%. January 6th, it was political theater, but there was this pervasive censorship that caused people to go to January 6th. And he says it's incorrect and inaccurate to place blame on what happened at January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. We're going to be getting to all of that here on the Morning Buzz. As always, I'm live in studio. You can see me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. The Los Angeles Dodgers, they held their Christian Faith and Family Day. I wish I could have gone. This was a really cool thing. I don't know. I'm glad that they did this, but it was almost like well, here's a bone kind of thing to the Christians because they haven't held one since 2019, a Christian Faith and Family Day at the stadium. It was announced only as a response to the Dodgers honoring these blasphemous drag nuns. Now, these blasphemous drag nuns, they go by the name of Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and they performed there last June for Pride Night or whatever. Now, the Dodgers had done the right thing and they uninvited the sisters because the sisters are blasphemous. Okay. And it was the blasphemy that bothered Christians. It wasn't that they were performing for Pride Night, it was that they were blasphemous drag queens. But the Los Angeles politicians, they bullied the Dodgers team and they re-invited them. So they uninvited them, then they had to re-invite them because the politicians bullied the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, Christian Faith Day is some sort of compromise or it's some sort of, well, here you go. And was hosted by the Dodgers pitcher. His name is Clayton Kershaw, who was very upset and wrote a scathing statement about the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence being re-invited to the Dodger Stadium to perform on Pride Night. Now, fans who stayed after the team's unfortunate loss against the Cincinnati Reds, the Los Angeles Dodgers, they lost to the Cincinnati Reds. They got to hear from a few A-list celebrities, including Chris Pratt. So Chris Pratt is one of those A-list celebrities where he is very open about his faith. And I'm sure, as I'm speaking about this, that the journalismers, the corporate journalismers, and the usual suspects on Twitter, they're going to be attacking him over what he was talking about at this event, at this Christian Faith and Family Day. Now, Chris Pratt, he gave this powerful testimony about his faith and accepting Jesus into his heart and life. And he says, quote, "It has truly made the difference in my life. It has grounded me in a way that I honestly could never have been grounded. I live in this crazy world with all you folk, and I see the weirdest stuff in Hollywood, and I'm really grateful to have that anchor. Jesus has been after me my whole life." So let's take a listen to a bit of his speech here on the Morning Buzz. Here we go.
Grounded me in a way that I honestly never could be grounded. I live in this crazy world with all of you folks, and I see the weirdest stuff in Hollywood, and I'm really grateful that I have that anchor. And so for me, the way I mean, Jesus has been after me my whole life. He's come to me when I was young. He came to me when I was at church when I was young. He came to me in Hawaii when I was a young man, and he came to me again in the most profound way about 10 years ago when my son, Jack, who is here, say hello, Jack. And he surprised his mom and me with a 10-week early birth and came out around 3 pounds. And in those days, I had been back and forth. If God would touch me, I'd be so moved, and a couple weeks later, almost like it didn't happen. You know, they call it backsliding. I was just kind of swept up by the world, the way that we constantly are. That's why we need Jesus every day, not just one day, not just Sunday, but every day.
We need Jesus every day, not just one day, not just Sunday. We need Jesus every day. And then he talked about, you know, his testimony where his son was born 10 weeks early and he kind of backslid into the world and he started putting the world first again. But then he came back and he just says that Jesus has always been after me. And I was like, oh, Chris Pratt, I love you so much. He's an A-list actor. And look, I look forward to seeing how much content is created attacking Chris Pratt because Jesus loves when people attack Christians because Jesus just goes after you more and more and more and more when he sees those attacks. So I look forward to the content that is created attacking Chris Pratt for praising Jesus. Um, and, you know, Chris Pratt did not affirm these sisters who bashed Jesus and called it a family friendly event. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, Kat, I turned off my internet in June and I don't know what the sisters are. Well, here's a quick rundown for you. Okay. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but the sisters, what they do, they frequently dress up as Mary, Jesus, and other religious figures, and then they start to strip on the cross. They mock the Stations of the Cross. They mock the Eucharist. The Dodgers uninvited them from Pride Night when it was brought to the team's attention that this is considered very offensive to millions of people. And I want to make a note here. No one complained about the Dodgers having a Pride Night. People started to complain about this specific group because they are a bunch of blasphemous queens, drag queens. After the sisters were uninvited, leftist politicians, they got involved, and then the team was forced to re-invite them. They literally bent the knee, right, and invited them, and they issued this full-throated apology. And LGBTQ activist bullies demand that you support their every single kink or else. So eventually Pride Night happened, and that day, it was really interesting because there was nobody inside the stadium. They snuck the sisters in and they honored them and gave them some sort of award an hour before the first pitch was thrown. And there were more people protesting outside than there were people inside actually honoring the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. So, wanted to bring that story to you. Now, I'm wondering if Disney is shorting, and I swear that's an unintentional pun. Just kidding. I'm wondering if Disney is shorting itself in the market. They seem to enjoy setting investors' money just on fire, ablaze. The latest is this live action Snow White. So Disney has created this live action Snow White. There's no prince. And Snow White sounds like a gender studies cousin, gender studies major, that cousin at Thanksgiving who's, a gender studies major and you're like avoiding sitting next to this person at Thanksgiving and you're like, "Man, I really hope I don't get stuck next to this guy at our family gathering." So the Snow White actress, the person, I don't even know her name, it's not important. She is um talking here about the film and she was casted in it because she's Latina she's a Latina and she sounds like that cousin at your Thanksgiving your Thanksgiving dinner who is a gender studies major and you're just like, gosh, I really really hope that this woman is not or this that I have to sit next to this gender studies major. So let's take a listen to her remarks about the film. Here we go.
Mean that it's no longer 1937 and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that
she's
is
not going to be
yeah.
saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign.
Oh, that's so sweet. Gosh, you just is insane. So this is a film, this live action film. It's got this Latina woman in it. They casted her in it and made a big fuss about how she's Latina, and there's no prince in it, I guess. And instead of seven dwarves, they're actually just hanging out with six full-size people and Peter Dinklage. So the seven dwarves were casted, and a lot of little people who are dwarfs, right, are taking to social media and they're blasting Disney for it, because here they are, they're saying that, oh, we're all for diversity, 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 but then they go and they don't cast the dwarves as actual little people. So I'm going to be back. I've got a clip. Tammi is the latest little person to go viral, blasting Disney for not casting the seven dwarves as dwarves, uh, instead of having a movie that would give seven little actors an opportunity uh, they otherwise wouldn't have. The it's more important for the lefties to pander to the 5 feet or taller individuals, people who are 5 feet or taller. It's more important for them to pander to, Latino, gay, with sexual orientation, black, right? So the seven dwarves are all diversity hires, but they refuse to actually put in these seven dwarves like dwarf actors, and dwarf actors everywhere are very upset about it. I'll be back here on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Hey, if you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. I so do appreciate it. We are going to be getting to the Trump indictment. I know you guys really want to hear about that, but I do want to talk about these seven dwarfs because they are going viral, these little people, and they are blasting Disney because they're going to sit there and they're going to say, we love diversity. We love diversity. And we love gay people. We love black people. We love Latina people. But then when it comes to an actual uh part in a film where it would be awesome to have like a little person play in it, uh, they they don't they don't cast little people in it. So they do have one little person in it. It's Peter Dinklage, but the reason why there's no other little people in this movie is because Peter Dinklage. Um, I'm going to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. You can smash that like button if you're watching right now. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Now, we are going to be getting to that Trump indictment, Vivek Ramaswamy. Look, I've said it from the beginning. Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence, all of them. It is not honorable to win this election uh, as a Republican because of the election interference that has been going on. So here you have Vivek Ramaswamy taking a strong stance for Donald Trump, yes, but I want him to go even further. Drop out. If all of them were to drop out, then this would show the DOJ that, hey, nobody should be running against Donald Trump at this point because there has been election interference. They have been indicting him. This is his third indictment. And, if I was a candidate in the Republican primary, I would see this and if I were to win, I would feel guilty. I would feel off about that because there's been election interference and I wouldn't have come by that election honestly because if he's not allowed to run because he's convicted of something and they're going to try to say that the 14th Amendment that the 14th Amendment says that you can't run for president if you're charged with some sort of treason or a sedition or something like that. They're going to try to invoke the 14th Amendment and try to get him to not run if he's convicted of this. And if that were to happen, I just don't see how you run in this Republican primary or as a Republican in the general, knowing that you came by that nomination in a way that was undemocratic, in a way that was banana republic political persecution. Like, how do you run? How do you do that knowing that the DOJ knocks somebody off of the ballot? Because the next go around, this sets a precedent. The next go around, if you are against the Washington establishment and you run for president, this sets the precedent that they can just knock you off of the ballot. They can charge you with something, they can indict you, convict you, and then boom, there you have it. Uh, you're no longer on the ballot. So this sets a very dangerous precedent. And if I was Vivek Ramaswamy, if I was Ron DeSantis, I would drop out and I would say, um, but I do also understand if Chris Christie and Mike Pence, they're never going to drop out, right? If all of them were to collectively drop out and collectively get together and drop out and show the DOJ that, hey, we stand behind Donald Trump and we aren't going to participate in this um, election interference, then that would speak volumes, and that would be the move. But we know that Mike Pence isn't going to come out there and drop out of the race. He's already taken to social media and said that, uh, what what was the exact words? We heard it at the top of the hour, and I was just like, "Are you serious right now, Mike Pence?" Um, so Mike Pence, he comes out and he says, today's indictment serves as an important reminder anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. Look, Mike, I'm glad that Tucker Carlson tucked your career. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. And this indictment, I'm telling you, it reads like it was written by some sort of deranged college freshman who is perpetually furious that Trump ever became president. This indictment is ridiculous. We're going to comb through this indictment. We're also going to talk a little bit later about Vivek Ramaswamy blasting. He's the only Republican candidate who is blasting the Biden DOJ over this indictment. And he says that, look, the cause of January 6th, if there were some sort of riots that took place on January 6th. I wasn't there. I don't know. Everybody I talked to says that it was just a select group of people and it was all political theater. And I don't even know how many of these J6ers weren't feds, to be honest with you, weren't Ray Epps. So the true cause, this is what Vivek is saying, is this pervasive censorship. Yeah, the pervasive censorship caused people to go out to Washington, D.C. I had my plane ticket booked, ready to go. I was going to go to January 6th. I didn't get to go. But Vivek Ramaswamy is saying that this was incorrect and inaccurate to place blame for whatever happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't do it. It was this pervasive censorship. We were locked up in our homes. We were told that we were racist. We were told that we were anti-science. If we posted something on Twitter, on Facebook about how the vaccine wasn't good, like, and how it didn't actually prevent you from getting COVID-19. We were told that we were anti-science because we weren't wearing masks. We now know that masks did nothing. That's not me saying it. It was Anthony Fauci. We are now living a reality where vaccines don't do anything. You can be boosted for the billionth time, and they don't do anything to stop the transmission of COVID-19. They lied to you, and I know you're not ready to admit that to yourself, and that's okay, but they lied to you. The vaccines don't stop transmission. The masks don't stop transmission of COVID-19, and they withheld life-saving medication that saved my own father from COVID-19. I believe that to be true. Ivermectin. That's what caused people. They lied about the where the virus originated. So Vivek Ramaswamy is saying that it was the pervasive censorship during COVID-19. It was the BLM riots. It was everything in 2020 that led us to the Capitol on January 6th. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I do want to finish the story about the little people and how they're outraged about this Disney film. I'm not going to go see this Disney film. I'm definitely not going to go watch Barbie. I've made the decision. I'm going to wait until Barbie comes out, and then I'll watch it and critique it. But I'm not going to go give any of my money to these people. But Disney, they seem to enjoy setting investors' money ablaze with these stupid films. The latest one is this live action Snow White. The Snow White actress, she sounds like one of those gender studies majors' cousins that no one wants to sit next to at the family gatherings, right there. She is just woke beyond all repair. And, I played this clip for you where she says, it's not your traditional princess movie where she falls in. What's so wrong with falling in love? What's so wrong with falling in love? What's so wrong with having children and marrying a man as a woman? Practically everyone does it, right? And if you speak to women, and it's really interesting, I encourage you to, if you have an interaction with a woman, what's the first thing they talk about? First thing, is it their job, or do they talk about their children at home? Do they talk about their family at home? I encourage you. It's changed all of my interactions with women when I talk with them at the grocery store, or like when I have interactions with strangers. The first thing they talk about are their children. And there's nothing wrong with falling in love with a man and having children and trying to live happily ever after. There's nothing wrong with that. And this woman in the clip I played for you said that there was all kinds of things wrong with that, and that she's standing out and stepping up, and she's fighting for females everywhere in this role as Snow White. Okay, give me a break. So also in the film, instead of 7 dwarves, they actually casted the 7 dwarves as 6 fully sized people. These 6 fully sized people are a bunch of diversity hires between gay, black, Asian. I don't know. There's a lot of diversity here in this cast of the 7 dwarfs. However, there's no little people. So that's what all the outrage is about, because Tammi is the latest little person to go viral here on Twitter. And she talks about how, Disney is so woke and they're all about diversity, but they refuse to actually hire little actors and actresses in the roles here for in a role that is designed for a little person. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
Is this their like woke spin on things? Because I don't get it. I really don't. Because it really sucks when they're the ones screaming the loudest about inclusion and then they pull this stunt. So everybody can be included except the little people. I mean, but we did give you that token, little person. Thanks. I think you kind of missed your mark. I won't be seeing this movie. 6 of the 7.
So there you have it. There's Tammi, and she's losing it because, and I agree with her, right? It's like Disney is supposed to be this beacon of diversity, and here's all of these roles, 7 different roles, and there's all kinds of actors that are little. And they did have this one token little person. He's Peter Dinklage, but she's kind of missing a key point here about Peter Dinklage. Peter Dinklage is actually the reason why there are no other little people in the movie. So when the live action Snow White was announced, he lashed out and called it tone deaf when it came to the depiction of 7 dwarfs. So he actually said that, Disney casting him as a 7 dwarf, or casting dwarves as the 7 dwarfs, that it's tone deaf. So Dylan Postel, he's another little person actor, and he was not here for the hot take of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs remake. So he actually says that the esteemed actor took things way too far. As a result, he's actually hurting the dwarf community. So let's take a listen here to Dylan Postel and how he condemns Peter Dinklage in his take here on the woke Disney film Snow White. Here we go. Oh, hold on. Let me. So Peter Dinklage was trying to say that these dwarves, right? They were these cave dwell in the original Snow White, that they were portrayed the dwarves as like some sort of cave dwellers, and he was just completely wrong about that. And Disney bent the knee, and they looked Peter Dinklage in the eye, and told them that they would fix it. Hey, don't worry, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna make the 7 dwarfs these mystical creatures instead of these cave dwellers or whatever. Even though they're completely wrong about that, as Dylan pointed out, that they weren't portrayed as some sort of cave dwellers in the original make of Snow White. They were actually rich. They had gems. I'm not like too familiar with the Snow White thing, but so he makes a point. He says you screwed all of these other little actors out of the roles by sitting here and uh, eliminating these dwarf positions because they made them 7 mystical creatures instead of dwarfs. And I think it's so funny that Peter Dinklage wound up with the job himself. So somehow he made it to where he could screw all the other little people actors out of the roles, but yet he got the job himself. Complete savage. All right, I do want to shift gears here on the morning buzz, but I'm going to have to take a break. We're going to talk about the Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy and how he has posted an announcement online after this Trump indictment, this news broke out. And I think that more Republican candidates need to come out in the way that Vivek Ramaswamy is. Ron DeSantis didn't even mention Donald Trump by name. He did release a statement on Twitter. I've got that for you as well. He didn't mention him by name. He also took a very brief statement, neglected to defend President Trump. So we'll be back here on the other side of this break. This is the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you guys could go ahead, smash that like button, it would be great. Mike Pence needs some English language comprehension lessons when it comes to the U.S. Constitution. Yes, so Mike Pence, he gets out there and he starts saying that, anybody who um, sees themselves higher than the Constitution or whatever, what was his exact Trump's indictment serves as an important reminder anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. Look, shut up, Mike Pence. Who is your audience? I don't even know who your audience. Who are you talking to? Mike Pence and Chris Christie, they're never going to drop out of this race, which is why it's so hard for me to say that, hey, um, I think all the Republican candidates should drop out of the race. I would love to see Vivek, Ron DeSantis drop out of the race and say, look, this is election interference at a highest level, and I don't feel comfortable running running in this election because it's been interfered with. Um, they won't do this. I don't know if it would be more harmful considering that Mike Pence, Chris Christie, and the like will not drop out of the race no matter the circumstances. So they'll always be there, but it would be great to see them all drop out of the race and Donald Trump be the sole Republican nominee. They're trying to do this, get him out in the primary because it would look even worse if they tried to get him out in the general, right? Because then he's the Republican nominee. So Jack Smith, he wants this speedy trial. Speaking of Jack Smith, we are going to be talking about this little presser that he held. He didn't take any questions. Jack Smith, he held a presser and he said that the DOJ will hold the criminally responsible accountable for January 6th. He's the only defendant on this. And to lay this at Donald Trump's feet and to blame January 6th on Donald Trump is just ridiculous. And I'm going to get into the third paragraph specifically of this indictment because it's ridiculous. And he even screws up. I think in the third paragraph here, it reads this way. President Trump had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even claim falsely that he won, but apparently he's indicting him anyway. So this is what his own indictment reads. He had a right, like every American, to speak publicly. Like, what are they indicting him for? Is it the speech that he gave at the Ellipse? They're trying to say that he interfered with the election him solely, and then now they're going to use these election machines and stuff like that, and that he caused this interference in the election. I don't get it. In addition to obstructing the January 6th congressional proceeding, I guess giving the speech at the Ellipse is what they're trying to say obstructed. But in the own indictment, he says that he had the right to speak publicly about the election. So how can you say that he obstructed the January 6th congressional proceeding by just speaking? Because you yourself admit that he's allowed to speak publicly about the election. Imagine if we could indict the DOJ. We'd easily prove, without a reasonable doubt, it has engaged in a wide-ranging conspiracy to interfere in this 2024 presidential election. I think we should defund it. We should indict the DOJ. That would be great. And not to mention the judge. This judge is ridiculous that they've got on this case. Now, I guess he's supposed to be arraigned tomorrow, Donald Trump. And look, if they're convicting him, if they convict him, they're going to try to invoke the 14th Amendment because the 14th Amendment says if you commit treason against the United States, then you can't run for public office or like federal office. So the judge here, who was assigned to the case, has been described by AP News as, quote, the toughest punisher of the January 6 cases, placing all defendants in these cases behind bars. So her name is Tanya uh, Chutkin, and she's the judge. Yeah, seems par for the course when it comes to justice in DC. They've got the craziest judge on this case, so he's going to be convicted. And I want to point this out that Rush Limbaugh years ago um, predicted this. He predicted this. I'm going to play that clip here for us coming up in just a bit. If you guys are watching right now, go ahead and smash the like button. Also, if you could, please share this out with your normie friends. That would be greatly appreciated. You can always subscribe to the channel. Type in your search bar Cat Peterson 929 or Conservative Cat 929. You should be able to find me on YouTube pretty easily. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Like this episode of The Morning Buzz. Smash that like button or the rumble button. Okay, one of Rush's final episodes, he actually predicted that the Democrats would indict Trump to try to prevent him from being elected again. This is what it sounded like, Rush Limbaugh predicting Donald Trump's indictment years ago, and this was one of his final episodes. Here we go.
I know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward. They believe that they can destroy this bond that exists between you and Trump if they somehow make Trump look bad, make Trump look like a reprobate, embarrass you about Trump. They can't do it because you came before Trump.
There you have it. Rush Limbaugh. They remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Donald Trump. That was one of Rush's final episodes where he predicted the Democrats would indict Trump and they would try to prevent him from running again and from being elected again. And what's going to happen, and I know this to be true because look at this judge that they've got here. Her name is Tanya Chutstick or whatever her name is. And she is described by AP News as, quote, the toughest punisher of January 6 cases, placing all of the defendants behind bars. Yeah, that seems about par for the course for justice when it comes to justice in the DC area. Okay, so yes, he'll be convicted. And then what's next is that they're going to try to say that the 14th Amendment prevents him from running and prevents him from being elected as in federal office, because the 14th Amendment says you can't run if you've committed treason against the United States. So, or you can't be elected. From what I understand in the 14th Amendment, now there might be some legal arguments against that. We'll have to see. I do want to get to Vivek Ramaswamy here coming up in just a little bit. Also, Lizzo sued by dancers over fat shaming. Yes, that Lizzo. So Lizzo herself, I look up a picture of Lizzo if you have no idea who she is. She's fat shaming people. Yes. And what's even more gross, and there's this degeneracy, they're suing her for the fat shaming, and they're suing her for sexual harassment because she made her dancers eat bananas out of strippers at a club. Yes. I'm sorry I've got to bring this story to you. I'll be back here on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Yes, I'm so sorry. Oh, I really hate this story, and I hate that I pulled it, but I have to bring this to you. If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash the like button. So Lizzo, let me go ahead and pull up a picture for reference here, so you guys can so you guys can see what I'm talking about. She's the one fat shaming her dancers. So here we go. Let's just pull this picture up. She's fat shaming her dancers, saying that they're lazy because they're fat or whatever. This is Lizzo. Let's pull one of these pictures, I guess. I mean, sure, why not? Let's go with that one. This is Lizzo, and I'm so sorry I have to do this to you, but she's the one who fat shaming people. She's being sued for that actually right now, and she's being sued for a hostile work environment, and she's done all kinds of things as far as sexually harass people by making them go to a strip club and touch naked strippers, and they had to allegedly catch these bananas flying out of. Now, I there's no video of this, but there's eyewitnesses, and this is a legit lawsuit. So her dancers are suing her over fat shaming and sexually harassing them at this strip club where they had to catch bananas from strippers. And I'll let you kind of picture whatever happened at that strip club. Um, right, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it makes me very uncomfortable. But Lizzo, of all people, are being sued for fat shaming. This is the same person who um, bitched and moaned about how, being big is beautiful and blah, blah, blah. So 2 months ago, this plus size diva threatened to quit the music business if people didn't stop fat shaming her. And the fans and trolls aren't allowed to call her lazy or worse off as a performer because she's fat. Only she can do that to her performers because that's exactly what she did. She said that they were lazy and that they were worse off as performers because of their weight gain. Yes. So um, we'll be talking about that a little bit. Plus, I do want to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, how he argued that the real reason for the riots that happened on January 6th, whether that be from Ray Epps type figures or feds, it's all political theater. He said that the real reason for these riots was because there was systemic pervasive censorship throughout America in 2020. On January 6, 2021, this was a year after we were told as a nation that we had to stay locked down in our houses. You had to shut up, sit down, do as you're told. If you questioned that, you were a racist, you were anti science, your social media accounts were silenced, and you had to stay home and locked down unless, of course, you were a part of BLM and Antifa, because if you were a part of those domestic terror groups, then it was perfectly fine to roam the streets and burn down everything. Okay, so that's what happened on January 6th. A lot of people gathered, I'll say this, people gathered because um, we were told that we can't talk. We were told that we can't speak. And then we were told that we can't scream. So then when you tell people you can't scream, then you resort to um, uh, smashing things, smashing windows. Nobody died on January 6th except Ashley Babbitt. And I've heard that even more January 6th attendees, Trump supporters, have died. I haven't been able to see anything mainstream really that proves that. However, there was this expose done on Gateway Pundit that proves that there were, or that shows that there was a lot of people who suffered insane injuries at the hands of the police officers there on January 6th. and it caused them to die later down the road or at a later date. Um, so you guys can look that up. But Ashley Babbitt is the known person to have died on January 6th. So hold on. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Vivek Ramaswamy. Yes, I've been teasing it. I love Vivek Ramaswamy. He's fantastic. He's a Republican presidential candidate, and he posted this announcement online in defense of former President Donald Trump after the news broke that he's being indicted. I think this is his third time by the Biden DOJ. And this is over the illegal attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. You cannot say that this is all at the feet of Donald Trump. Okay. He remarked that the indictment by the Biden DOJ marks a sad moment in our country's history, as it is political prosecution in addition to political persecution. And then he goes in and he says that the corrupt federal police just won't stop until they've achieved their mission, which is to eliminate Donald Trump. This is un-American. This is un-American. And I like how Vivek Ramaswamy says this: I commit to pardoning Donald Trump for this indictment if I am to be elected president. Donald Trump isn't the cause of what happened on January 6th. The real cause was this systemic, pervasive censorship of citizens in the year leading up to it. Okay, so if you tell people they can't speak, that's when they start to scream. If you tell people that they can't scream, that's when they tear things down. If we fail to admit the truth about January 6th, it'll just get worse and worse and worse. So yeah, there's truth to what Vivek is saying here. We wouldn't have gathered for the Stop the Steal rally. We wouldn't have gathered if we weren't so peeved off about what was going on in 2020. So let's take a listen here to Vivek Ramaswamy's announcement. I'm going to play that here for us in the 8 o'clock hour. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I also want to point out that Ron DeSantis, who is also running, posted a much briefer statement on Twitter, and he neglected to defend Donald Trump. And he neglected to even mention Donald Trump by name, Ron DeSantis. So we will be back. We're going to be talking about that. I think that these guys should drop out. And I mean, do you really want to win this? Like Vivek, Ron, do you guys really want to win this election knowing that the DOJ meddled in it and knowing that this is all election interference? Like, at the end of the day, say you do win, are you going to feel good about it? Because you probably wouldn't have won had not Donald Trump been indicted, convicted, and told that he couldn't run for president because of the 14th Amendment unjustly, right? So to me, if I was running as a Republican, I would drop out today and I would throw my support behind Donald Trump and show the DOJ, you can't pull this crap with us. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's 2020 all over again, but this time they're not hiding their interference. Exactly. They're not hiding their interference. They're just being blatantly open with it. That's what happens when you don't stand up and say, hey, no, this is election interference. Now, we did stand up. I remember January 6th very vividly, and I wanted to go so bad. But I couldn't because of school. And I remember calling up um, a friend of mine at the time and saying that I don't think January 6th went far enough. That there should have been some sort of, and I'm just going to be honest with you, my exact thoughts at the time. Now, I dealt with a lot of things during COVID. I almost lost my dad. I myself got very, very sick. And it was my fault, right? Because I was smoking at the time. I was a big cigarette person. And I quit smoking because I got so sick from COVID-19. I lost my job as a server. And I never really got back into working at serving after COVID-19. I probably would have been continuing to serve and be a waitress, right? Had it not been for COVID-19. So there were a lot of things, and I know that, there was so much worse. There's people who lost their loved ones to this illness. Um, I was fortunate to have known about ivermectin, and I believe that ivermectin saved my father. I was fortunate to know what was going on when it came to remdesivir, which at this point people are saying is essentially rat poison. And remdesivir, it is very hard on your kidneys, and they were giving it to people with comorbidities and with kidney problems. So I was fighting all of the time while my father was in the hospital, with the doctors telling them not to give him this, 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 and I worked to try to get ivermectin. Um, and he made it out with his life. Now he is no longer able to work, right? And I'm just going to be honest with you, right? And I don't think that he cares that I'm honest with you. This illness really took him out, but I do think that the censoring of individuals who were talking about ivermectin, who were talking about hydrochloroquine, who were talking about these different kitchen sink type things that actually worked, um, and trying to prevent people from going into the hospitals, because these hospitals, they'd get these patients and then they wouldn't come out. They'd put a mask on them. They'd put an oxygen mask on them, and they'd give them remdesivir. And I'm not blaming healthcare workers. Okay, you were told to do something and you did your job and you did it well. Not trying to blame people for all of that, but there were effective medicines out there that were helping people, and the government was censoring individuals who were talking about ivermectin. You couldn't even post about ivermectin. I think I made one post one time, and the post was taken down about ivermectin. You couldn't talk about how there were BLM riots in your hometown. The Target here in Bloomington was looted. I'm sure if I were to post pictures about the Bloomington Target being looted and show pictures of people burning things up, I would be censored for all of that. But just this pervasive censorship, just this continual systemic censorship is what drove people to attend the rally at January 6th. Okay, so I know this because I was living it, and I had my tickets booked ready to go to January 6th. And the reason why I wanted to go to January 6th was because I wanted to feel heard. I wanted to feel heard because we weren't heard during the 2020 pandemic. And Vivek, he is just calling it like it is. I love Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm very excited for his campaign. I'm sure his poll numbers are going through the roof right now, because of his announcement that he released here. Um, if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead and throw in the comments section what you guys think about 2020 and what you went through, because everybody has a story. That I meet people every day, and the thing they tell me about is what they went through during 2020. Whether that be your kids were forced to not go to school, you had to quit your job, you had to cut back your hours, you were struggling financially, you lost your job because you refused to get the jab. Um, right, whatever the story is, I'd love for you to kind of briefly talk about what happened to you during 2020, because that's very, very much the reason why people were gathering at Washington, D.C. Now, when you have a mass gathering, right, with no Capitol Police, no National Guard, although that was all requested, when you have this large group of people, there's going to be shady characters, right? Just like at a concert or a mass gathering or a music festival, right? You go there and there's going to be shady characters who have ill intentions. When you gather a large group of people together, there's something bound to happen that's bad, or more so. Uh, the risk of it is much, much higher. So um, that's what happened. And Vivek just lays it out, the truth. I'm going to be back. We're going to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy plus Lizzo getting sued for fat shaming. Yes, that Lizzo, the Lizzo who's like 400 pounds. She's getting sued for fat shaming others. That's pretty funny. Oh my gosh, Lizzo? Lizzo. All right, honey. Well, she's dealing with a lawsuit. So some dancers are fat shamed by Lizzo, and now they're getting together a lawsuit to sue Lizzo over her fat shaming them. Yes, that Lizzo, the Lizzo who's like 400 plus pounds, she was fat shaming her dancers, her backup dancers. And the lawsuit gets even crazier than that, folks, because apparently she sexually harassed them at a strip joint and she made them eat these banana dildos out of strippers. Yes, I'm not going to get into too much detail because I hate this story, but I have to bring it to you because I read it and I was like, there's no way. I was like, that's hilarious. Lizzo is getting sued by her dancers because she fat shamed them and she sexually harassed them and created a hostile work environment. Everything that these dancers are saying, I totally believe 100%. We are going to be getting into that, plus Jack Smith holding this Trump indictment presser. The presser was like 2 minutes long. He didn't take any questions from the press. So it's not really a presser. He just kind of came out on the microphone and he said that the Biden DOJ is going to hold the criminally responsible accountable for January 6th. So the criminally responsible, the only defendant on this indictment that looks like it was written by a college freshman who is just big mad that Donald Trump won the 2016 election, right? Like that's the way this indictment reads. It's really garbage. I've read through the indictment. It's crap. And he promised his office is going to be seeking a speedy trial. I think they're trying to get Donald Trump before the general election, before he is the official Republican nominee, because it would look really bad if they tried to take Donald Trump off of the ballot uh, in the general election when he's campaigning against Joe Biden when he's officially the Republican nominee. So I think they're trying to speed this up. Later, I do want to talk about the Chicago public schools. So Chicago, they set up this illegal immigrant school for children. And what's really hilarious about this, Wire points it out, that this school that they set up for the illegal immigrant children is failing epically. Like only 2 out of every 100 kids can do math proficiently. And like 5 out of every 100 kids can read at grade level. And like this school sucks. And it's so funny because you've got all of these Democrat politicians in Chicago. They're like, yeah, we're going to do this great thing for illegal immigrants. I think that the illegal immigrant children would be better off uh, not going to this school because whatever kind of education is, if you want to call it that, I don't even know if it's education really going on. Whatever's happening in Chicago public school systems, I can tell you right now, it's not education. And these poor immigrant children, they probably would be much better off just staying home and learning their ABCs with their mom. Let's get to Lizzo. Oh yeah, we'll get to Lizzo first. Before I get into Lizzo, one thing that I've been asking people to do on the live stream, you can see me live in the studio, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, and I've gotten some really great responses. Vivek Ramaswamy, he's talking, and you're going to hear it here in his announcement. He's talking about what led to January 6th. And he says that the real reason why these riots took place at January 6th was because of this systemic, pervasive censorship throughout America. And, you know, January 6th, it was a year after we were told across the nation, everybody was told to stay locked down in their house. You were told to shut up, sit down, and do as you were told. Otherwise, you were racist, you were anti science. And if you were to speak about ivermectin, if you were to speak about how the vaccines don't stop the COVID transmission, if you were to talk about any of that, you were silenced on your social media account. You were told that you had to stay home. You were told to lock down. Unless, of course, you were a part of BLM and Antifa, these domestic terrorist groups that were perfectly fine to roam the streets and burn cities down. And uh, it, what went on when I talk to people in 2020, everybody's got a story. I've got a story. Lost my job. I was a surfer. It was devastating for me to lose that job. I got really sick. I was a smoker. It's my own fault, right? I got COVID-19. It knocked me out for a couple of weeks. Wasn't able to spend the holidays with my family. And then a year later, right, or a few months later, after I got sick, my father got sick. Um, yeah, I didn't give him COVID. He got it from, of all places, the doctor's office, we think. But he got COVID and he almost didn't make it out with his life. Now, me being me, right, at the time, I was researching ivermectin, I was researching remdesivir, and we as a family fought all of the time with the doctors, the nurses to try to get him the right health regimen that we were researching on our own. And to this day, I swear that that's what saved my father's life was the ivermectin that I found for him. And that the pushing the doctors to not give him the remdesivir. There was a lot of things that happened to people. People lost family members. My dad is doing much better now, and he is no longer working. COVID made sure that he wouldn't be able to work anymore, which was devastating for him. But he's spending a lot of time with my mom, so that's good. Some much needed time with each other. So God works in wonderful ways, and it's all God, right? I prayed every day that he was going to get better, and he got better. But you went through something in 2020, and what you went through is the reason why people showed up for that Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. People showed up, and yes, maybe there were some riots, breaking of windows. I want to point out that Ashley Babbitt, a Trump supporter, was the only person killed on January 6th. And what led to those riots was this gathering, a gathering of people, a large gathering of people, thousands of people. And there was no Washington, D.C. police. There was no National Guard, although that was all requested. And of course, when you get a massive amount of people together, the risk of those people getting rowdy, the risk of those people causing a riot increases when you gather all kinds of people together. So that's what happened. And here's Vivek Ramaswamy talking about this, and he released this announcement on his Twitter. And he talks about the real cause of January 6th and how this is political persecution and prosecution of Donald Trump, and that this is un-American. And he even commits to pardoning Donald Trump for this indictment if convicted. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
Party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a third indictment just in a matter of months against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. I want to be very clear. I am running for U.S. president in that same Republican primary. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That's not how I want to win. This is not about politics to me. This is about first principles. We do not want to become a country where the party in power is able to use banana republic-like tactics to eliminate its political opponents. Yet I'm sad to say that's exactly where we are. The allegations in this indictment fall flat. It is wrong and incorrect and inaccurate to place blame for what happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. I said this at the time. I've said it ever since then. I continue to say it today.
So there you have it, Vivek Ramaswamy, and whoop, you can hear the poll numbers just rising. So Vivek Ramaswamy, he came out very strong against this indictment, and Ron DeSantis didn't. So he's also running. He posted a much briefer statement on Twitter. He neglected to defend former President Donald Trump or even mention him by name. So Ron DeSantis said, as president, I will end the weaponization of government, replace the FBI director, and ensure a single standard of justice for all Americans. Well, I've seen reports. I have not read the indictment. I do, though, believe we need to enact reforms so that Americans have the right to remove cases from Washington, D.C. to their home districts. Okay, so, and then Washington, D.C. is a swamp, and it's unfair to have to stand trial before a jury that is reflective of the swamp mentality. One of the reasons our country is in decline is the politicization of the rule of law. No more excuses. I will end the weaponization of the federal government. So he refused to even mention Donald Trump by name there. I want to make that clear. I like what he says here about Washington, D.C., and this removing the cases from Washington, D.C. to their home districts. Now, the Washington, D.C. judge, the woman that's supposed to be arraigning him, I think, is a insane leftist. In fact, AP News has called her the toughest punisher of J6 cases, placing all defendants in all cases behind bars. So, that seems pretty par for the course when it comes to justice in DC. Trump is going to report to a federal courtroom Friday. That's August 3rd, so tomorrow. Or tomorrow? Friday, August 3rd. That's not right. But Thursday, August 3rd. Yep, Thursday, August 3rd. So I think it's either August 3rd or August 4th. I have to figure that out. In the coming days here, he's going in Jack Smith, he wants a speedy trial because he wants to eliminate Donald Trump from the primary before he gets to the general as the Republican nominee, because it would look really bad if they tried to politically persecute him while he was running against against Joe Biden. So that's Vivek Ramaswamy. I do want to shift gears here. Let's talk about Lizzo real quick before I have to cut to break. The odds of a story about Lizzo fat shaming people and having it not being the most shocking part of that story are as high as her cholesterol. I'm telling you right now. So that's not the most shocking part. Lizzo actually being sued for fat shaming her dancers. Have you seen Lizzo? Do you know what Lizzo looks like? She's like 400 plus pounds, folks. And she's big woman. And she's fat shaming other people. But that's not the most shocking part of the story here. And the odds of that happening are as high as her cholesterol, I'm sure. So this story includes strippers, eating bananas that came out of strippers, and that's all I'm going to say about this. I'm not going to give you some vivid details. All you really need to know is that Lizzo believes in body positivity for me and not for thee, according to a new lawsuit filed by 3 dancers of her former dancers. They are alleging sexual harassment and a hostile work environment. They also said that they were fat shamed. So the fat shaming comes from this concern that somebody had, or that Lizzo and somebody else had about this dancer, and they thought that she wasn't committed anymore, and they used the word lazy. So I guess lazy is like the buzzword here, and that was fat shaming in a sense. So according to the lawsuit, it says this, quote, in professional dance, a dancer's weight gain is often seen as that dancer getting lazy or worse off as a better performer or as a performer. So if you're gaining weight, then you're seen as like not committed to the dance anymore. So Lizzo and Mrs. Scott's questions about Miss Davis's commitment to the tour were thinly veiled concerns about Miss Davis's weight gain. Oh, that's kind of a stretch, but still, Lizzo fat shaming people, which Lizzo previously called attention to after noticing it at the South by Southwest Music Festival. So it was a music festival, and she called attention to Davis's weight gain, and then a bit later, they started questioning Mrs. Davis's commitment to dance, and they even kind of used the terminology lazy. So the lawsuit highlights a trip as well to Amsterdam, where things quickly got out of hand. So this is the shocking part. Lizzo began inviting cast members to take turns touching nude performers, catching dildos launched from performers, and eating bananas protruding from performers. That's all I'm not gonna get too graphic for you here on the Morning Buzz. But what's so funny about this lawsuit is that exactly 2 months ago, this plus-size diva Lizzo threatened to quit the music business if people didn't stop fat-shaming her. So here she is complaining about these trolls who aren't allowed to call her lazy or worse off as a performer. Only she can do that to her dancers. You can't do that to her. You can't fat-shame her, but she can fat-shame others. Lizzo didn't respond for anybody to anybody who asked for comment about this lawsuit. The fat shaming thing is fun because I mean, look at her. It's funny that she's fat shaming people, but I can see how that would be hard to kind of prove in court that she fat shamed this woman just because she called her lazy. Um, so I don't know if that's going to be a a smoking gun, I guess, in the in the lawsuit. But this banana stripper thing at the club, there were eyewitnesses, and yeah, as an employer, it's very inappropriate to command, really, or ask your employees to touch naked performers. So, Lizzo, big yikes, big yikes. That was a crazy story. I'm gonna be back. Jack Smith holding this press conference last night where he announced the unsealing of yet another indictment against President Donald Trump. We'll be back. Now, I do want to talk about how the third paragraph, I've read the indictment. The third paragraph of the indictment, unlike Ron DeSantis, I actually read the indictment. Uh, he says something in the third paragraph that's insanity, and it just crumbles. The indictment falls apart in this single sentence in the third paragraph of the indictment. I'll be back with that next. Out of hoo-ha's, yeah. I hate that story. I hate having to like talk about it. But like it is a lawsuit and it's very explicit in the lawsuit. So it's available public record. And I think that the irony here is what's so beautiful because literally 2 months ago, Lizzo was like, I'm leaving the music business if people don't stop calling me fat. And then here she is calling people fat. And then on top of that, the most shocking part of this lawsuit is that she pretty much demanded, like, imagine if your employer took you out to a strip club and told you and started asking you to touch naked performers. That is so wrong on so many levels. And she's an employer, right? These are her backup dancers, and yeah, that is wildly inappropriate. And I mean, the degeneracy here is insane. But yeah, I saw that story and I had to bring it because I thought it was funny. The irony. Now I've been asking you guys, thanks so much, Ryan, for sharing your 2020 story. What's your 2020 story? What were you doing? And just everything that you went through in 2020 is exactly what is going to lead you to some sort of rally, some sort of stop the steal rally. And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't about overthrowing an election, it was about frustration and people trying to get their voices heard. And that's why people showed up to the Stop the Steal rally. Okay. So I like what Ryan has to say here. I was subbing in schools. Schools closed. I had no job. I took one vaccine of the J&J when I got the jab at Sam's Club because they required me to show a card if I wasn't masked. Um, so I regretted it because they never asked for the card again after that. So yeah, I know a lot of stories like that one where you were forced to get the jab and you didn't want it, or there was a lot of things going on in 2020. These BLM riots, being locked down in your home, losing your job. That sucks, Ryan. I didn't know that about you, that you were subbing in schools and then the schools closed down and then you didn't have a job. Um, but everybody has a story about 2020 and this pervasive censorship, this feeling that you couldn't go live your life the way you wanted it to is exactly what led to January 6th. It led people to gather, to assemble, to have their voices heard. And they're trying to throw this all at President Donald Trump's fate. It's not on President Donald Trump. He's not the reason 2020 happened. Okay, 2020 happened because these people, these bureaucrats, these health experts were out there lying to you and to Donald and to our elected representatives because we thought that they were the experts and that, they would have good intentions. But of course, they didn't have good intentions. And they lied about things like ivermectin. They lied about things like masking, vaccines. They lied about everything. Everything. We know that now in 2023. And we knew it then. It's just then it wasn't socially acceptable to point out the lies. Today, it's very it's socially acceptable to point out that masks do nothing and that vax do nothing because we're living it, right? COVID-19 didn't go away, and we stopped masking and we stopped vaccinations. Or I don't know anybody who's continually going out to go get boosters nowadays. After 1, 2, 3, people are done. I'm not going to continue to get boosters because they do nothing. Um, so yeah, that's what led to January 6th, and Vivek Ramaswamy points that out. That hey, the reason why people gathered was because 2020 sucked, and people wanted their voices heard, and the censorship. Not being able to talk about ivermectin, not being able to talk about the BLM Antifa riots and how BLM is a money laundering organization, an organized crime. So be sure to text in your 2020 story. I'm going to see if I have any other ones. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Chris Pratt shining his light so brightly at the Dodger Stadium for Christian Family Night. Chris Pratt, he's one of these A-list celebrities who are not, he is just totally not shame of his faith. And he says that Jesus has always been after me, and he was shining very brightly at the Dodgers Faith Night after, of course, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. These are drag nuns who strip on the cross. Okay, so they dress up as Jesus, Mary, and this is a blasphemy. I mean, it's a blasphemous group of drag nuns, and the Dodgers honored them last June at Pride Night. Now they uninvited them because they were made aware of how blasphemous and how offensive this is to millions of Christians everywhere. So they uninvited them. But then they re-invited them because these Los Angeles politicians bullied the Dodgers team into hosting them for this honoring. And as some sort of compromise, they decided to host this Christian Faith Day. And this was hosted by the Dodgers pitcher, Clayton Kershaw, because at the time he was very loud about how he was upset that the Sister of Perpetual Indulgence, they were being honored at that stadium. So they haven't held one of these Christian Faith and Family Days since 2019. They just are doing this because they hosted the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. So Chris Pratt, he gave very powerful testimony of his faith. I'm going to be talking about that here coming up in just a little bit. But first, this is a local story. And it really bothers me. And I don't know why we aren't talking more about this story. So it's been about 3 weeks. And from what I can tell, this woman's killer has not been found. And he's on the run. They have a suspect. She's a Springfield woman. Now, she's a leftist activist type woman. Her name was Emma Schaefer. And her suspect in her murder is still on the run. 3 weeks. From what I can tell, he hasn't been found, according to news reports. Now, I've got to try to do some digging. U.S. Marshals are on the case, the U.S. Marshal Service. I'm sure local authorities, I mean, everybody is on this case. But it's been 3 weeks, and they haven't found the guy. His name is he's a 25-year-old Gabriel Calixto. and he's accused of killing his ex-girlfriend, Emma Schaefer. Emma Schaefer, this beautiful woman, she's was a young girl, and this guy who stabbed her, uh, allegedly, he's the suspect, right? He's believed to be a dreamer, an immigrant here on the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. So he's an immigrant, and he's believed to be a dreamer. He also, according to authorities, has ties to some place in Mexico. Um, and from what reports say, he has yet to be found. He's still on the run. And I found this picture of Dick Durbin. Somebody sent it to me, pictured with this guy. And I guess this was some sort of event that Dick Durbin was at, the senator. He's a Democrat, and this guy was pictured with Dick Durbin, and he said, "Thanks for all you do for the immigrant community." And this is what I'm talking about, folks. This guy should have never been here. He should have never been here. This DACA program is crap. And he's 25 years old. And I want to point this out. Now, numbers have changed on this. It used to be where recipients of this DACA program, they're here on the DACA program. It used to be where they were like average age is 35. Now it's gone down a bit to 30. Um, but let's just talk about this for a second. The name of the DACA program, okay, it's called DACA, but it stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. The average age, and this isn't my reporting, this isn't my average. This is, their averages. The bureaucracy of the immigrant system. They say that the average age of recipients of this DACA program being here on DACA is 30 years old. 30. Why are we calling it childhood arrivals? They're not children. The 30-year-old men who stab women. Emma was very young. She was a Democrat. She was a far left activist. And what bothers me about this is that we have people like Nikki Baczynski honoring. I mean, yes, we should honor the life of Emma. I'm not saying that we shouldn't honor the life of Emma, but they're using this and they're politicizing it, of course, right? Her death. And quote from Congresswoman Nikki Baczynski, she goes, "As we mourn her loss, we should also celebrate her life by striving to create a world she dreamt of, one filled with love, equality, and opportunity for all." Let's take a listen to Nikki Baczynski here on the House floor. Here we go.
Activist who sought to create positive change in the world around her. From an early age, she understood the power of her voice and the importance of creating good trouble. Her commitment to social justice and equality was unwavering, and she inspired people of all ages to join her in the pursuit of a better world. Whether she was serving as a board member for the Resistor Sisterhood organization or volunteering to deliver groceries for the Springfield Immigrant Advocacy Network, the list of Emma's involvement in the community was endless. Not only was Emma an outspoken advocate, she was also an avid reader and lover of theater and passionate supporter of the arts.
So she goes on and she talks about how we should all, perform the same type of activism that Emma was in, and, that we should try to create the world that she dreamt of. Look, folks, the type of activism that Nikki and Democrats participate in lead to death and destruction. She was stabbed by a 24-year-old dude here on the Obama DACA program. He's 25 years old. He shouldn't be here. DACA, right? I mean, it's called childhood. And it's a childhood program. It's childhood arrivals. Like, what do you mean a 30-year-old is allowed here on that program? What the hell are we calling this program? Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It makes zero sense. And he's still out there on the run. I do have to take a break. Wow. We'll be back. Scott Robbins, Scott's Takes here on the Morning Buzz. A little bit later, we will be talking about Jack Smith. He held some sort of presser. It really wasn't a presser. He just spoke for 2 minutes about the indictment. We're back next.
What's the A?
Mechanical pencils. He's just so beige. I call him mechanical pencils. He's just not. He's just not like, who's your audience, man? Scott Robbins right over there. This is the Morning Buzz.
Are you referring to Mike Pence?
I am. Mechanical pencils.
The thing is, with substance, a guy like him, I'm sure he has plenty of substance. I do. But it's just, he's beige. It's just, there's nothing to be excited about with this guy on a national screen. I mean, he peaked with Trump. That's it. And now I guess he's gone to, let's play the Donald Trump's a criminal card. No one's above the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. You heard him say all that. And I'm like, maybe this is the last straw. Maybe this is all you got. You're not. And the thing about it is, he and Christie may not even make the debate stage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that they could be done. They could pull a Kamala Harris. She made it once.
I think Perry Johnson might be doing just a tad worse than them.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is. Seriously.
Yeah.
You said Perry Johnson. I don't know who that is. Is he running for president?
I think that's the guy. Yeah. Well, I've actually caught an ad of his, and it was real funny. He's having people, if they donate $1 to his campaign, they get like $10 in a gas card.
Oh.
And obviously he just wants to get on like the debate stage, right? So,
right.
I mean, he's eating costs, right? Because he's giving away these $10 gas cards. But
yeah. Well, who's this guy?
Weird. He's like got weird hair, and he's like
right. And this is a stunt, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Who's the guy from the Dakotas? South Dakota Governor Burgum? Is that his name?
Gosh, I don't even
Doug
know.
Burgum or something. He's
I know
running
Asa
too.
Hutchinson is.
Asa Hutchinson. That's history too.
Alabama. Is he from
Arkansas?
Arkansas.
Yeah, I know he's from Arkansas. God, we should play this game and award prizes or something. Where are these guys from? Yeah, I think it's South Dakota. Doug Bergman or Burgum or something. I don't know anything about it.
Who that guy
yeah. All right. And then he's running. And so Pence just stuck a fork in whatever chance he ever had by coming out and saying that. Also, Ramaswamy is the latest to say that he would pardon Trump should he be elected president. That campaign, keep an eye on this guy. That campaign has a little traction.
Oh, yeah.
People seem to like him.
Oh, I love him. I love
Vivek
him.
Ramaswamy.
Here's the thing. I was talking about this, and I love the Indian community. I've gotten really good at cooking some Indian food.
Yeah.
I love Indian food. But I've gotten really good at cooking it. The Indian community is so tight, and they are all for Vivek Ramaswamy. I know when I talk about him on the show, it's just like I'm inundated with the Indian community here in Bloomington Normal, which there is a large Indian community here, and they love him. They love him, and they're traditional. They're all about family. They're all about each other, and they'll get out the vote for Vivek. So I think that this Indian community in the United States, I know it's not huge or anything, but they'll show up for Vivek. So people are going to be like, "Oh wow, he's really pulling."
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I find him fascinating. I listen to him because I think he's got a lot to say. Mm-hmm. And he's not one of these guys that compartmentalizes all the political talking points and just throws them out there. He just talks. Mm-hmm. I mean, a very, very casual way he talks. And when confronted, he bites back too. I've seen that happen. So I like the guy. I don't know. We'll see. There's a woman named Amy McGrath. Amy McGrath is she lives online. She ran against Mitch McConnell, and we all know how that turned out for her. But this is something that the progressives do a lot of. And I have to laugh to myself when I hear it, because if you're a parent and you have children, you know the scenarios they cook up in their brains that say their kids did something probably is not true. This is the latest. She tweets this out. My 7-year-old daughter today said, "Mom, I don't get why all the presidents were all boys, no girls at all. Why is that?" Then she says, "Where do I begin?" Well, the 7-year-old did not say that to her mother, okay?
Oh, my gosh.
Not without prompting. And by the way, young lady, who are you to assume everyone else's gender, huh? I'm going to stop you right there. Progressive mom, come on, you're letting me down here. They do this stuff all the time. They pull out, and my daughter said to me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I saw this one disgusting thing. I wish I had the clip on me, but it's this woman, and she's got a baby, like no more than maybe 2-3 years old. and she's got the baby there, and she's asking the baby, and of course, septum piercing, complete with the pink hair, green hair, whatever it
There
is.
you go.
And she's holding the baby, and she goes, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And the child can't even talk. And
No.
I mean, then she goes, "It's okay if you don't know yet." And she was like, being non-binary is so good. And she's serious. She's talking to a 2-year-old about whether or not he's identifying as a girl or a boy.
I know.
It's sick.
They did, and somebody clapped back on this woman and said, "Why is my 8-year-old grandson today said, why is a woman like Amy McGrath in Kentucky so hateful towards boys?" And I said, "Because she's a Democrat." That's pretty funny. I want to get to this quickly if we can. Do we have time?
Yes.
Corey Bush.
Oh.
I know.
Scott.
Quite frankly, the dumbest person, right? Currently in Congress. A Marxist, socialist. She's all those things. So again, she sends this out. "I know what it's like to be unhoused. I once lived in my car with 2 kids. No one should have to experience that. That's why I've reintroduced the Unhoused Bill of Rights." Okay, again, this is typical stuff they do, right? It's not going anywhere, but you throw it out there for virtue signaling purposes. This is where it gets interesting. This guy named Jimmy clapped back and said, "You once lived in my parents' home in Hazelwood, Missouri, and stopped paying rent for almost 2 years. It was a conservative Christian Army serviceman that helped you for quite some time. Do you ever talk about that? You ever thank my dad for all his charitable support?" And she doesn't respond to that, of course.
Huh.
This guy named Jimmy said, "I stand corrected. It was 1 year. My dad pulled out the rental contract and noticed to vacate to confirm. Longest year of my family's life." See, his father was in the military, so he left, and they had to leave to go move with the military, but they kept their house and just rented it, right? Well, Corey Bush was the renter.
Wow.
Said he was a single homeowner who was on duty and ordered to Maryland, causing my family to rent their first home in Missouri. It was terrible. He went on to say, "It was a terrible experience for all of us. And the other side of the eviction narrative is never told. Note, my dad didn't even execute the eviction until he waited. He waited until he was about 5 months after the notice to vacate because your children were in school. He didn't want them booted out of the house while they were in school." Did you ever thank him? No, of course not. No, of course not.
Of course not. It's
But I thought that was interesting and sobering because she's always pounding the gavel up there, right?
Yeah.
She knows what it's like.
You know what's distasteful to me is they should have their own separate Bill of Rights, like as if they should have more rights. And the only 2 people that I know in history, Barack Obama and I think it was Franklin Roosevelt, who came up with the idea that the government should have more, like their own separate Bill of Rights. What are you talking about? Rights are endowed by a creator, God. They're God-given rights. And you don't get to create rights out of thin air for a certain population. You're weird. Like, stop that. Yeah. That's bizarre, and it's so unconstitutional.
And meanwhile, Corey, why don't you thank the white Christian guy who helped you out?
Yeah.
And let you stay somewhere you weren't paying rent on because he wanted to evict you and your kids. But, of course, that doesn't add to the narrative, does it?
Yeah, the eviction
doesn't help.
The other side of the eviction story never told.
Yeah, never comes up. All right, Kat, have a good day.
You too, Scott Robbins.
I will talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
All righty.
Scott Robbins is on later tonight, folks. Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. You can catch him at 8 o'clock. It's the funniest show. I know. Sometimes when I look at people and they're laughing at 8 o'clock at night in their car, I'm like, I know they're listening to the Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins show. Either that or they're just crazy and they're hysterically laughing for no reason in their car. All right, I'll be back on the other side. We're going to talk a little bit about Chris Pratt and how he is just giving this testimony about his faith and how Jesus has been running after him. And he was at the Dodger Stadium. We'll be back next. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for joining me. I so do appreciate it. Sup, cuz? Hey, Donnie. Thanks so much for watching. I don't know if you're watching still, but love you. And I hope that, I think you moved to Arkansas or Alabama. Maybe it was Alabama. But I'm sure that it's better than here because we're dealing with all kinds of crazy, including I am going to be getting to some of these local stories. I do want to hit this story again one more time because it's so important. Emma Schaefer, her killer is still out there. The suspect it's been like 3 weeks now since this Springfield woman was stabbed to death, and he's the suspect in her murder. His name is he's a 25-year-old, and his name is Gabriel Calixto, and he's accused of killing this woman, Emma Schaefer, who was his ex-girlfriend. And get this, the guy's here on DACA. Guy is here. He is deferred action for childhood arrivals. Dude is 25 years old. Why the hell is he here? He's believed to be a dreamer immigrant here in the United States on deferred action for childhood arrivals program. According to authorities, he has Mexico's. Maybe he fled the country, folks. It's been 3 weeks, and they still haven't caught the guy. And I've got a photo, actually, of Dick Durbin and this guy. Apparently, Gabriel took, like, a picture with him and captioned the picture, "Thanks for all you do for the immigrant community." I'm calling on Dick Durbin right now to address Emma Schaefer's death and to help in this manhunt of this animal who stabbed this girl. He's here on DACA. And, she was a far left Democrat, left wing activist. And I get that, right? It's tragic that she fell victim to advocating for these causes, um, the causes that ultimately lead to death and destruction. This advocating for things like DACA, that's why this happened. The guy shouldn't even have been here. Nikki Budzinski weighing in on it, and she goes, quote, "As we mourn her loss, we should also celebrate her life by striving to create the world she dreamt of." Exactly. This is a world that's only in dreams, okay? We don't live in a perfect world. If we know nothing about these individuals, and if we allow 25-year-old men to come here on a childhood program, on the DACA program, and to be here illegally, illegal immigrants, if we allow them to be here without knowing anything about them, and these are grown men, they're going to take advantage of this system. And if you advocate for programs like that, then it can only lead to death, destruction. The average age of a DACA recipient is about 29 years old. You tell me, is that young adults? No. That's like full grown men uh, who come here and stab women, okay? And they're using this DACA program, and they're abusing it, really. So it's a big story here in Springfield, Illinois, and I'm very upset that this is not getting media attention. This should headline every single news outlet. This should be national news. Here we have a guy 3 weeks on the run after stabbing a woman, and he's here on the DACA program as a 25-year-old man. Media blackout, I'm telling you, not a whole lot of people are talking about this story. It should be the headline on national news. It should be a huge headline, and I'm calling on Dick Durbin, the senator. I'm calling on him to address Emma Schaefer's death and to help out in this manhunt of this animal who's suspected to have stabbed this girl to death. Her name is Emma Schaefer. And this guy, he's 25 years old. He's here allegedly, from what people have been saying, is that he's a dreamer. He's an immigrant here on the DACA program, and he's 25 years old. According to authorities, he has ties to Mexico, and it's been 3 weeks since this woman was stabbed to death, and the suspect for her murder, is on the run. His name is Gabriel Calixto, and he is accused of killing Emma Schaefer, his ex-girlfriend. Now, we've got Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski out there on the House floor talking about this. And she honored the life of Emma Schaefer by saying, quote, "As we mourn her loss, we should also celebrate her life by striving to create a world she dreamt of, one filled with love, equality, and opportunity for all." Okay, I'm going to level with you. The type of activism that Nikki and these Democrats participate in leads to only death and destruction. There's no reason why a 25-year-old man should be here on this DACA program. I'm going to tell you what DACA stands for. You ready? DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Childhood arrivals. When I say the word child, what do you think of? I think of children ages 0 to 12. That's what a child is, okay? And you want to know the average age of recipients of the DACA program, or who are here on that Obama DACA program? The average age is 30. Why are we allowing grown men to be here in the United States through this program designed and named for children? I mean, this is disgusting. It's disgusting. And by their own standards, this is what the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program was supposed to do. It was created to protect eligible young adults. So, in and of itself, they named it wrong. It's young adults, but I mean, you tell me, is 30 young adult? To me, young adult is like 18, 19, maybe 20, um, who were brought here to the United States as children from deportation, and to provide them with work authorization for temporary renewable periods. So that's what the program does. Why is this guy here on this program? And he hasn't been caught yet. I'm calling on Dick Durbin to help catch this guy, her suspected killer. And fun fact, Gabriel, he was pictured with Dick Durbin. I don't think I mentioned that. He was pictured with Dick Durbin. That's why I'm calling on Dick Durbin. He was pictured with him. And Gabriel, he made a social media post and he said, and he captioned it, thanks for all you do for the immigrant community. And he was standing there smiling with Dick Durbin. So, Dick, get out there and find this guy. Find this guy and bring him to justice. He shouldn't have been here. He's 25 years old and he's here on the DACA program. Come on. All right. I do want to get to this story. Chris Pratt just giving testimony about his faith. He's bold. He's a bold Christian. He's an A-list celebrity. And I think that's important. Also, Chicago, they set up this migrant school for children. And little thing, though, the school is failing children in as far as education goes. Yeah, so we are going to be getting to that story. If you guys are watching, go ahead and smash that like button. That would be greatly appreciated. If you guys could smash the like button right now, that would be great. Please smash it and share this video out with your friends. You can hit the Rumble button, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and subscribe to this channel. Now, the CPS schools. So this is an illegal immigrant school. It's a high school that they created because they've got all these floods of illegal immigrant children coming in, and they want to teach them and educate them. The Democrats, so they created this school, or they are making it to where these illegal immigrant children can go learn in the Chicago public school. And little thing, though, about the Chicago public school that they're having the immigrants go learn in, like 2 out of every 100 students can perform proficiently when it comes to math. And like 2 out of every 100 children, I don't know the exact statistics. I'll pull them up here in a little bit. But I mean, the math and reading scores are abysmal. We're going to be back in just a moment. Share this video out with your friends and be sure to like the content. In one of Rush Limbaugh's final episodes, he predicted that these Democrats would indict Donald Trump and try to prevent him from being elected. Let's take a listen to Rush Limbaugh back then when he was predicting this. Here we
I
go.
know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward. They believe that they can destroy this bond that exists between you and Trump if they somehow make Trump look bad, make Trump look like a reprobate, embarrass you about Trump. They can't do it because you came before Trump.
You came before Trump. Yep. So Rush Limbaugh, he says, they remain scared to death of you. They are scared to death of Trump. That's what what Rush Limbaugh said when he predicted that Trump would be prevented from being elected again by the Biden DOJ or by the Washington establishment. Now, before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about CPS, Chicago Public Schools, and I just find this story to be really funny. So Chicago Public Schools, they recently announced that they're going to be using this high school. It's called Clementi Community Academy High School as some sort of pilot enrollment center for the city's illegal immigrants. So they want illegal immigrant children to be educated, and they're going to start putting them in schools through some sort of program, right? Some sort of enrollment program. So the Brandon Johnson administration said it wants to, quote, ensure better educational outcomes. Aw, how nice. How sweet. Yeah, well, Brandon, honey, that's going to be pretty tough because this school, I mean, the enrollment center where they're enrolling these illegal immigrant children to be educated in our schools, here in the Chicago public school system is huge. This is why it's very important. At Clementi, this specific enrollment center, just 5 out of every 100 students, and this is per wire points, are proficient in reading. That's abysmal. That's terrible. And it's even worse for math. It's 2 out of every 100 students are proficient in math. What's worse, a full 70 out of 100 students at the high school there scored nowhere near the reading proficiency on the SAT. So these kids are not learning at this school. So, I mean, I think that it would probably be better off for these illegal immigrant children to not go to this school at all, because the kids go in there and then they come out dumber than what they were before. I don't know what these teachers are doing, but like 2 out of every 100 kids can do math. To be fair, the children aren't going to be directly enrolled at that high school. That's just the enrollment center. Now, there are going to be surrounding schools, okay, that parents can enroll their children in. And when you look at the surrounding schools, there's the West Town neighborhood, I guess, that have student outcomes that aren't much better than Clementi's. 7 out of every 100 students can read at grade level at a nearby elementary school. There's Wells Prep, 9 out of every 100. There's another elementary school. It's 4 out of every 100 can read at grade level. I mean, this is bad. Even the top area schools like Pritzker Elementary and LaSalle Language Academy, they have less than half of all students, or less than half of all of the students are reading at proficient levels. So the top schools in the Chicago public school system area, even those are performing at a dismal levels. Math results are even worse. I just was reading off the reading data. There's no real mention of these failures, of course, in any kind of mainstream news articles or Chicago articles. The Tribune is not picking it up. Of course not. They're not going to cover CPS's mishandling of the immigrant flow, the illegal immigrant inflow here. And they're definitely not going to be talking about the long running inability to teach kids at these schools. They don't teach the skills that they need. They don't teach the skills um, that they should have growing up, right? Reading, just the simple act of reading. They're not even teaching the kids how to read. So I couldn't imagine. I mean, these new students, these illegal immigrant children, I couldn't even imagine what kind of needs they're going to have as far as educational needs. I'm sure they're far bigger than that of like an American child who was born here. I don't even know if these kids are going to be able to speak English or what, but these politicians, administrators, the media, they're not going to talk about the failing system. They're not going to talk about how they're welcoming new children into this failing system, new children who probably have far greater needs than that of the American children when it comes to education. The Illinois children, the Chicago children. So I don't know. Maybe CPS is just finally happy to have warm bodies in their empty, failing schools. Maybe that's why they've created this program. Who knows? And I do want to point this out. Illinois Policy Institute, they've got a study out there, and I found this to be interesting. Since 2010, teachers unions in Illinois, they've contributed $20 million to current lawmakers and their political committees. So according to the study, the Illinois General Assembly's 177 members, more than 4 out of every 5 of them have received money from teachers unions. Wow. Wow. Chicago Teachers Union alone has funneled $1.2 million to current lawmakers. Teachers unions are buying off these politicians. Okay. Do want to shift gears. Let's talk about Chris Pratt a bit because I love Chris Pratt. A little bit later, I do want to get to Vivek Ramaswamy. He's come out and he's blasted the Biden DOJ over this corrupt indictment. And he says that the true cause of January 6th was this pervasive censorship. Now, I've been asking you what your life was like in 2020, because take what your life was like in 2020 and take that feeling and, even if you didn't show up to January 6th, the Stop the Steal rally, what you were feeling in 2020, would that have led you to some sort of protest if you were able to attend some sort of protest? Because what you were going through in 2020 is exactly the reason why January 6th happened. There was pervasive censorship, and it's inaccurate and it's incorrect to blame what happened at January 6th. If anything, really, it could have just been a bunch of feds breaking windows like Ray Epps. Who knows? At the feet of Donald Trump. Like, it's unfair and it's incorrect to place everything that happened at January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. It was because we were censored for an entire year. And we were dealing with things like COVID and Antifa, BLM, burning down our cities. I do want to get to that. But first, Los Angeles Dodgers, they held their Christian Faith and Family Day. And they haven't held one since 2019. So this was announced, this Christian Faith and Family Day. It was announced because there were these blasphemous drag queens. These blasphemous drag queens, they were called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and they were there during Pride Month at their Pride Night last June. So the Dodgers had done the right thing, and they originally uninvited the sisters, these blasphemous drag queens. But then, get this, the Los Angeles politicians bullied the team, and they had to re-invite the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence back to the Dodger Stadium to be honored during the Pride Night. So Christian Faith Day was some sort of compromise that they came to with the pitcher of the Dodgers. His name is Clayton Kershaw, and he released this scathing statement talking about how it was offensive and how they were discriminating and how having these drag queens was blasphemous to his religion. So as a kind of like, here's a bone, they said that they'd host a Christian Faith and Family Day. So fans who stayed after the team's unfortunate loss to the Cincinnati Reds, the Dodgers, they lost to the Cincinnati Reds, they got to hear from one of the few A-list celebrities who was very open about his Christian faith. That's Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt is an A-list celebrity who's always been very open And I'm sure the usual suspects, they're going to be attacking him all over Twitter. They're going to be writing headlines about him and how he spoke at this event. So he gave a very powerful testimony here at the stadium. And he talked about his faith and accepting Jesus into his life and what that meant for him. I want to play that here for you. And just take a listen to what he has to say about how Jesus done in his life. Um, this is Chris Pratt. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
In this crazy world with all of you folks, and I see the weirdest stuff in Hollywood, and I'm really grateful that I have that anchor. And so for me, the way I mean, Jesus has been after me my whole life. He's come to me when I was young. He came to me when I was at church when I was young. He came to me in Hawaii when I was a young man, and he came to me again in the most profound way about 10 years ago when my son Jack, who is here, say hello, Jack. And he surprised his mom and me with 10-week early birth and came out around 3 pounds. And in those days, I had been back and forth. If God would touch me, I'd be so moved, and a couple weeks later, almost like it didn't happen. You know, they call it backsliding. I was just kind of swept up by the world, the way that we.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. That was Chris Pratt talking about how, his faith has truly made the difference in his life. It's grounded him in a way that he could honestly never have been grounded. I live in this crazy world with all you folk, and I see the weirdest stuff in Hollywood, is what he says. And then he says, I'm grateful that I have that anchor. Jesus has been after me my whole life. And then he shares this amazing testimony about how his son was born 10 weeks early and how he was backsliding back and forth as a Christian. And he was, taking part in the world, and he wasn't, at um, a man of faith, right? And he was just going back and forth during this time when his son was born prematurely. And he talked about his son at the ball game. So I look forward to seeing all of the content that's created attacking Chris Pratt for praising Jesus, because it gets me excited as a fellow Christian, because I know that these attacks on these Christians, especially these Christians of like, they have fame. What starts to happen is their message starts to really just elevate. Jesus is always running after people who are bold, and Chris Pratt is bold. And, I know you're probably like, wait a second, Kat, I have no idea what you're talking about. And if you had your internet off for whatever reason in the month of June, here's a quick recap about the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And Chris Pratt did not affirm the sisters who bashed Jesus and tried to call it a family-friendly entertainment. Okay, so Chris Pratt was open about his faith. He didn't affirm the sisters. The sisters, what you need to know is that they frequently dress up as Jesus, Mary, other religious figures, and then they strip pole dance on the cross, and they make fun of things like the Eucharist, and they mock religion, they mock the Stations of the Cross. Now, the Dodgers had uninvited them from Pride Night when it was brought to the team's attention that this is considered offensive to millions of Christians everywhere. Notice, no one complained about Pride Night. They just complained about the blasphemous queens and their specific bit where they strip on a cross. So the sisters were uninvited, but leftist politicians, they got involved, and they forced the Dodgers team to bend the knee, and they invited them back with a full-throated apology. And the LGBTQ activist bullies, look, they demand that you support their every single kink or else. That's what went on. So eventually Pride Night happened, and there were a lot of people protesting the sisters outside of the stadium. The sisters, they were snuck in, and they were honored over an hour before the first pitch was thrown. So, yeah, that's your background of the Sisters of Perpetual. So good on Chris Pratt. Good on Chris Pratt. I do have to take a break, but we're going to be back. I do want to talk a little bit maybe about there's this story about this little person, and she's going viral now because Disney has come out with this movie. It's called Snow White. It's a live action version of Snow White, but little people and like the actors are really peeved off because they're not casting and they didn't cast actual little people as the dwarves, but they made sure to kind of create this very diversity hire type film, this woke film, by casting Snow White as a Latino person, as a Hispanic person. So we're going to be talking about that because this little person is going viral and she's sick of the woke spin on all of their films and how they're the biggest purveyors of diversity, but they refuse to acknowledge little people. So I'll be back here on the other side. This is The Buzz. So we'll be back here in just a little bit. Be sure to comment. Good morning. I so do appreciate it. Hi. Social justice equals communism. Yes, it does. Just look for those buzzwords, you know. You got to look for the buzzwords. Now, that was in reference, Kevin Lauer, to that story of Springfield, where this woman tragically was stabbed to death by this man who's here on the DACA program. He's 25 years old and he's on the DACA program. He's here as an illegal immigrant. And, you know, I love how the DACA program, it's like literally in the name, it says childhood. So why are we accepting people who are 25 years old to be DACA members? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So his name is Gabriel, and we're on like week 3 of him not being caught. And he's allegedly stabbed this ex-girlfriend of his to death. And the ex-girlfriend was a social justice warrior. I have no idea how the pair met. But she worked with a lot of immigrant organizations. She worked a lot with Democrats. Nikki Budzinski, she was honoring her life on the House floor. And she called on people to essentially participate in Democrat activism in the name of celebrating her life. So here's the quote: "As we mourn her loss, we also celebrate her life by, quote, striving to create a world she dreamt of, one filled of love, equality, and opportunity for all." So um, I'm going to level with you. Democrats, Nikki, uh, activism surrounding things like the DACA program, immigration, illegal immigration, and, you know, not becoming a citizen and staying here on work visas. This can only lead to death and destruction. And that's what happened in this case. This 25-year-old dude was here on the DACA program, allegedly, right? I think he's some sort of immigrant, and he's pictured actually with Dick Durbin. And he captioned the picture of he and Dick Durbin saying, you know, "Thanks for all you do for the immigrant community." So it's believed to be that he is an immigrant here in the United States on the DACA program. Um, Now, he has ties to Mexico. He hasn't been caught. He hasn't been caught. So, um, yeah, that's a crazy story. And I think that Dick Durbin should be I'm calling on Dick Durbin. I would hope that he um, participates in this manhunt and does everything that he can with his power as a senator to stop things like this from happening. Perhaps we should, oh, I don't know, um, only have children here on the DACA program or young adults. So this is a program that's designed for young adults. Um, 25 to me, I mean, young-ish adult, not really. The average age of a DACA recipient is 30, which means probably people 40 plus, 50 plus might be on this program. And that's not what it's designed to do. I think you could even, Democrats would even side with me there on that. What it's designed to do, and this is according to Democrats, right? They say that it's a program um, created to protect eligible young adults who were brought to the United States as children from deportation and to provide them with work authorization for temporary renewable periods. So, um, yeah, it's not like citizenship, but it's like citizenship, and they get work visas and then they don't get deported, right? So, the average age of receiving this program, of being a part of this program, is 30. And I think, we should call on Dick Durbin to stop allowing 25-year-old men to remain here on that program. Um, Durbin only cares about what affects his voter base. More voters is what he cares about. Yeah, so he's totally cool with the immigrant community because they probably vote for him. The illegal immigrant community. Um, yeah, so he stabbed this girl and he's on the run. I do want to talk about this Little People. She's gone viral. Her name is Tammi, and it's about this woke Disney film. It's the Snow White live action. Now, they casted Snow White as this Latina woman. And this woman, this actress, she sounds like one of those gender studies majors, with like, that cousin at your family gathering. And they're going to school for gender studies and you're like, "Oh gosh, please don't sit me next to this one. Mom, please no, don't sit me next to the gender studies cousin at the family gathering." So that's what she sounds like, right? And I'm going to play a clip of her. So there's no prince in this film and there's that woman who plays Snow White. And then there's, instead of 7 dwarfs, there's only one hanging out with 6 fully sized people. So there's only 1 dwarf and then there's 6 other full-sized people. So Tammi is the latest person to go viral here for blasting Disney for not casting these dwarves. It's Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. And what they could have done, there's no shortage of actors who are little people, like 4 feet tall, right? No shortage. And she blasts them for not casting little actors and giving them this opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have. And Peter Dinklage is the only one who gets to be in that movie. And there's a reason for that. So I'll be back. Hold on. Go woke, you go broke. Yes. So that brings me to this story, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. That's what the movie is called, folks. And gosh, this little girl, or this little person, she's going viral because she is blasting Disney. So I want to talk about this. I was wondering if Disney is shorting in itself in the market, and I swear I'm not trying to be punny there. They're shorting themselves in the market. It seems they enjoy setting investors' money on fire. I'm telling you. And their latest go woke, go broke film is definitely this live action Snow White. So this is set to hit theaters, I'm sure soon. Look, there's no prince in this film. So they took the entirety of Snow White and they distorted it and they created this new version of Snow White. They put an actress in there who sounds like a gender studies major cousin that nobody really wants to sit next to during a family gathering. I know when I get together, Thanksgiving, and I'm like, please, mom, don't sit me next to that gender studies major like cousin that's like, oh my gosh. So this is what the actress sounds like from the live action woke Disney film. I think it's important to hear so that way you understand the taste of what this film is all about. It's just a diversity hire. She's Latina, and they make sure everybody knows that this movie is about um, Snow White, we've casted as a Mexican girl. So let's take a listen here.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign. Yeah.
You said you were bringing a modern.
Okay, like what's wrong about dreaming about love? What's wrong about falling in love, having children? And all of my interactions, as soon as I started to be red pilled, right? As soon as I became really conservative, all of my interactions with women have changed. I notice as soon as I talk with women, the first thing they want to talk to me about is their children, or their family or their husband. Very rarely do you ever come into contact with a woman who is constantly talking about her career or, being a big bad boss, right? There's very rarely do you ever come in contact with a woman. I just take that, take what I just said and notice it in your conversations with women. You'll be shocked at how many times women will bring up their children before anything else, before anything about themselves. They'll bring up their kids, and that's just motherhood, right? So this woman is crazy, who's been casted now as this Snow White in the live action Snow White film. So there's no prince, there's that woman, and instead of seven dwarves, there's only one dwarf hanging out with six fully sized people. So Peter Dinklage is the woke actor who got casted into one of these roles as a little person actor. Tammi is the latest little person to go viral, blasting Disney for this. She takes to Twitter and she created this video, and she's upset that, here's Disney preaching diversity, 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 shoving it down your throat. I mean, they're like, yeah, look at this Latina woman that we casted in this Snow White role. And it's just like, God, okay, but what about little people? Here you have 7 different roles that you could cast a little people in. It's like literally a role designed for them. So let's take a listen to Tammi. Here we go.
Their like woke spin on things, because I don't get it. I really don't. Because it really sucks when they're the ones screaming the loudest about inclusion and then they pull this stunt. So everybody can be included except the little people. I mean, but we did give you that token, little person. Thanks. But I think you kind of missed your mark. I won't be seeing this movie.
So she's upset. And now one missing key point about all of this is that Peter Dinklage is actually the reason why there's not other little people in the movie. So Peter Dinklage, he came out and he said that the original Snow White film portrays dwarfs as, and it's a bit tone deaf. Deaf is what he said, the depiction of these 7 dwarfs. And he said, you know, that the dwarves shouldn't be pictured like that at all. And Dylan Postel, who is another little person actor, says that he's not here for Peter Dinklage's hot take here on Snow White in the Seven Dwarfs remake, because he's like, Peter Dinklage was really actually calling for it to be about, or to be these mystical figures rather than 7 dwarfs, because he said something like, oh, it's like cave dwellers, or like the made it look like they were all cave dwellers, the 7 dwarfs, but in reality, that's just not true. So let's take a listen to Dylan Postel and his take on Peter Dinklage's criticism of the film and how the dwarves were originally portrayed in the original Snow White. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
This is a fairy tale, a remake of a fairy tale. Pardon me. And this is also giving 7 dwarves, people, real life people, actors, a chance to star in a movie in a role that is fit for them, literally fit for them. I can't. When The Greatest Showman came out, I couldn't be the main lead. I couldn't be P.T. Barnum. I could have been one of the side acts because that role was made for me. And the issue at hand is, by saying this, he's doing something worse for the dwarf and the little people community. He's trying to take roles away. It really blows my mind. The whole woke thing, you're going too far. in my opinion. It's just it's too far. It's too much. You're trying to change something that doesn't need to be changed. There's nothing wrong with how dwarves were portrayed. He wants to say these cave dwellers. That's wrong. First off, they lived in a cottage, they worked, and they had a whole lot of gems. So in reality, they were rich. Let's be honest here. These in a fairy tale world, these guys were rich, and they all had separate characteristics that really taught and made themselves different from each other. They weren't just one being of dwarves. He had no issue, absolutely no issue, being cast as a dwarf, an elf, when he was representing that whole situation. That paycheck cleared just fine. When he was in Game of Thrones, he had absolutely no issue in that role when it was casted for a dwarf. That paycheck cleared just fine. Now this all of a sudden is crazy. This needs to be changed for current culture. Come on now.
Yeah, so there you have it. I wanted to play that for you because it gives you some perspective about Peter Dinklage. So he's kind of the reason why all these other little people actors got screwed out of these roles, because Peter Dinklage was like, "Oh, it's racist or it's discriminatory. It's not racist. It's discriminatory to cast us in these dwarf roles because these dwarf roles are, they're cave dwellers or whatever." And it's like, come on. The seven dwarves then became seven mystical creatures. Disney bent the knee to probably look Peter Dinklage right in the eye, right? Because they have to bend the knee. But no, so six of them are full sized, and the seventh is Peter Dinklage. So he screwed out all of these other little people actors of the roles, but he got the job himself. Complete savage. I do have to take a break. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. When we come back, let's talk about Vivek Ramaswamy and how he's blasting the Biden DOJ over this latest indictment against Donald Trump. The news broke. They're saying that Donald Trump illegally attempted to overturn the 2020 presidential election. That's just not true. We'll be back with Vivek Ramaswamy and his thoughts, plus Ron DeSantis releasing a statement. And I want to point this out. He didn't even bother to defend former President Trump or even mention him by name, Ron DeSantis. So we'll be back. Good morning. Hey. Thanks so much. The dwarves are probably supposed to be more like dwarves in Lord of the Rings, with proportionally sized limbs. That's why, that's what the cartoon depicts. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all kind of crazy to me. I think that there is a point to be made that if there are little people actors out there wanting to fill these dwarves, roles in the movie Snow White, then why not cast them in those roles, right? If the role is practically made for little people. So it's like, why not do that? But it's probably because Peter Dinklage came out and he was like, well, it's like discriminatory to cast us in these dwarf roles because the dwarves are like portrayed as some sort of cave dwellers or whatever. And it's just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, um, he says that he's harming the little people community. I don't know. There's like some beef there with the little people. If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash that like button, smash the like button. Now, one thing that I want to do is also talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. This hour, he gets out there and he says that this is un-American, and that then he commits to pardoning Donald Trump for this indictment. Now, Trump isn't the cause of January 6th, and I've been asking you guys to send in your 2020 story. What's your story? I've got a story. You've got a story about what you went through in 2020. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people were forced to be vaccinated, were forced to mask in their jobs. So it was a big deal, 2020, to a lot of people. And in 2020, people were censored. People were constantly censored. They constantly were told that they were wrong when it came to things like ivermectin, when it came to things like the mask, when it came to things like vax. And this pervasive censorship is what caused January 6th. And until we start to realize that, we are never going to be better off as a country. And Vivek Ramaswamy argues that, and he stands up for Donald Trump, and he says that it's unfair and it's inaccurate to place what happened at January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump and blame him for it, because it wasn't him. It was these bureaucrats, these medical experts like Tony Fauci, who lied about things like ivermectin. I know you guys have been watching me for a long time. You guys know that I went through some crazy things during COVID. I got sick myself for a couple of weeks, very sick. I didn't go to the hospital, but I was smoking cigarettes, and I think that's why I got so sick. I quit smoking after that, but God works in really mysterious ways. It's great. But um, I got sick. My father got sick. He was in the hospital for quite some time. We got him ivermectin. We told the doctors no to remdesivir, and we did our research. And to this day, I think that's why my father lived. He didn't get vaccinated. Um, and he was on this kitchen sink kind of regimen for COVID-19, which a lot of you were because you guys were reading. Um, and he made it out with his life. So to this day, I think that if things would have gone differently, if he been vaccinated, had we not been so adamant about him not getting that remdesivir, things could have played out differently for him, I think. And if we hadn't given him the ivermectin, maybe things would have played out differently for him and gotten the help from, shout out to Dr. Chisholm. She was helping us out a lot. There were doctors who were fighting for people and fighting for now I'm not blaming healthcare workers, right? There were healthcare workers who were just following orders, and they were told that remdesivir and certain different health regimen. I will never forget, like the doctors that we dealt with were awful. As some of them were good. Um, there was this one doctor, I'll never forget it. It was like an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and during COVID, what would happen is you would get nosebleeds from the oxygen. And we were telling them, like, hey, can't you just cauterize it? Can't you just cauterize it? Why do you have to use this balloon to stop the bleeding? And you look up the prices on these things. The balloon is just obviously more um, costly because it's a product. It's something you put up there, and it's a product, and it's costs money. And they were buying these balloons from big pharma, and cauterizing it would have not been as costly. So they wanted to use the balloon. And this ears, nose, and throat doctor was like, no, he's got to have this. And like, well, what's the difference? And he was just like totally rude to me. But yeah, the point is that there were medical professionals out there who were just following a criteria. And they were told to do things that they probably didn't want to do. Um, so we went through hell, right? Like everybody else during COVID-19, lost the job, sucked. Sucked for you, I'm sure. I mean, we had people lose their jobs. They were forced to take the job. They didn't want to take the job. Um, I can proudly say that I'm going on day 700 billion of not being jabbed, and I'm completely fine. But going through all of that is what led people to try to gather together to get their voices heard. We'll be back here on the Morning Buzz. Be sure to like the video. Woo! Good morning. Hey, I'm live in studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. You guys can watch me live in studio. Have you ever wanted to know what the studio looks like? Well, we've got a camera here, and you can see inside of the studio. You get exclusive content there. I talk during the breaks. So you get extra news stories if you tune into the live stream. So you can tune into the live stream. Now, before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Vivek Ramaswamy. I want to talk about him today because he posted this announcement yesterday after news dropped that Trump is going to be indicted yet a third time. 3 times this guy's been indicted, and they're indicting him now, Biden DOJ, over these alleged illegal attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, he says that this is un-American, and it's true. Vivek Ramaswamy is right, and he says that the real cause of January 6th and whatever happened on January 6th, whether that be a bunch of feds breaking the windows or whether that be, people getting rowdy and breaking the windows and hurting people, right? Whatever happened, I wasn't there. I don't know. Whatever happened, it happened because there was systemic and pervasive censorship of citizens the year leading up to it. 2020, people went through hell. My own family personally afflicted by COVID-19. Um, I got COVID-19 myself. God works in good way in mysterious ways, but in good ways, I got COVID-19 and it woke me up to not wanting to smoke anymore because I got very sick. I'm glad that I get to come to the radio and I'm alive to tell the tale. But my dad got really sick. We had to find ivermectin for him. It was really hard to get doctors to uh, do this health regimen that ultimately, I mean, by every metric, I don't think that he was supposed to make it out of it, right? Everybody was like, no, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it, and he was going through all of it. And we gave him ivermectin. We fought against the remdesivir that they were giving to patients. And he made it out. He made it out. And, God is good in that way. But a lot of people weren't as fortunate as I was. People lost their loved ones during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's because they lied and censored you. Okay, they lied about ivermectin. They lied about the masks. They lied about the vaccines. They were lying, lying, lying. They even lied so much about the gain of function research that was going on in Wuhan, where the virus originated. Okay, so this was the real cause of January 6th. People were upset. If you tell people they can't speak, that's when they scream. If you tell people they can't scream, then that's when they tear things down. And if we fail to admit that truth, January 6th will just be a preview of far worse to come. And here's Vivek Ramaswamy talking about just that. He released this lengthy announcement on Twitter. We'll take a listen to it, and then we'll talk about Ron DeSantis and his response next. Here we go.
A political party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a third indictment just in a matter of months against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. I want to be very clear. I am running for U.S. president in that same Republican primary. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That's not how I want to win. This is not about politics to me. This is about first principles. We do not want to become a country where the party in power is able to use banana republic-like tactics to eliminate its political opponents. Yet I'm sad to say that's exactly where we are. The allegations in this indictment fall flat. It is wrong and incorrect and inaccurate to place blame for what happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. I said this at the time. I've said it ever since then. I continue to say it today.
So there's Vivek Ramaswamy and his reaction to the indictment. And you can hear it. The poll numbers are rising. And Ron DeSantis's poll numbers are going down, down, down because of his statement. It was a briefer statement on Twitter, and he neglected to defend President Donald Trump or even mention him by name. So here's his statement. As president, I will end the weaponization of government, replace the FBI director, and ensure a single standard of justice for all Americans. While I've seen reports, I have not read the indictment. I do, though, believe we need to enact reforms so that Americans have the right to remove cases from Washington, D.C. to their home districts. Washington, D.C. is a swamp, and it's unfair to have to stand trial before a jury that's reflective of this swamp mentality. Then he goes on, he says, one of the reasons our country is in decline is the politicization of the rule of law. No more excuses. I will end the weaponization of federal government. So it's briefer. He doesn't name Donald Trump by name. Look, he's got a point about the judge. So something you need to know is that the judge, according to AP News, is the toughest punisher of J6 cases, placing all defendants in all cases behind bars. Her name is Judge Tanya Chutkin, and that's the judge who has taken on this case. Seems about par for the course for Washington, D.C. justice, right? Trump is supposed to report to a federal courtroom sometime this week. Look, he's got a point, but Ron DeSantis, you should have come out stronger, man. Like Vivek Ramaswamy did. You need to say that you're going to pardon Trump. You need to at least mention the guy by name. And if I had it my way, all of these primary Republican candidates would drop out because they would see that, hey, if I win, this is not going to be an honest and fair election. Even if I win the Republican nomination, this is election meddling, and I don't want to come by this nomination dishonestly. And it's going by it dishonestly because this is election interference. Look, imagine if we could indict the DOJ. That would be great, wouldn't it? It'd be so easy to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they have engaged in a wide-ranging conspiracy to interfere with the 2024 presidential election. I say we defund the DOJ right now. There's a third paragraph. Unlike Ron DeSantis, I've actually read the indictment. I read it last night. I stayed up for all hours of the night, so I'm a little tired. I'm getting buzzed up on coffee, though. Buzzed up on news, buzzed up on coffee. I've got the third paragraph here of this indictment, and it just crumbles. The indictment just crumbles because, I mean, he's like talking out of two sides of his mouth, this Jack Smith, whatever his name is. I'll be back. Trump makes Democrats scared. The Democrats are scared. They can't have Trump in office. Tim Scott is my choice. Yes. I like Tim Scott. I'm a fan of Tim Scott. Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be my choice if Donald Trump is to be convicted and not able to be elected. However, I will say this, and I said it before. I wish that I would have recorded myself. At the time, I wasn't really even a conservative. I had a bunch of liberal friends, and I told one of my liberal friends, I go, this is the last election. This is the last election that we are ever going to have. And I said that in 2020, that this was stolen. The election was stolen. And this is the last election that could have been fair and free. And I've said it from the beginning. I mean, they're trying to get Trump now before the general because had he, been the Republican nominee and then they started all of this, it would look really bad because then you've got just two candidates. You've got Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and then they're going after like that would look really bad. They're trying to get him out. That's why Jack Smith is calling for a speedy trial. They're trying to get him out before the general. So that way it doesn't look as bad. But yeah, so this is just awful. Now, Jack Smith, I am going to play this here, I think. This was a press conference, kind of. He didn't take any questions, and it was like 2 minutes long. I'm going to play this here for you coming up in just a bit. But this is Jack Smith, and he says that J6 was caused by Donald Trump, and it was fueled by his lies. So in the indictment, there's a third paragraph, and they talk about how Donald Trump is allowed to lie and allowed to take the position of, hey, the election was stolen. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can talk publicly about that. So in the indictment, they point that out, but yet they're indicting him for it, for publicly speaking. What, they're going to go after him for his speech at the Ellipse on January 6th? Like, that's publicly speaking and making known your thoughts about the election. You can say the election was stolen. There's nothing that stops you from saying that. You can say the election is stolen. That's your freedom of speech if you believe that, and you believe the people who are telling you the election was stolen over the other people who say that the election wasn't stolen. There's no reason to indict Trump over, him believing other people over certain other people, right? Him believing other kinds of people over others. So we're going to talk about Jack Smith here on the Morning Buzz. We're going to play a little bit of this clip here for you. And then I'll be back talking about that third paragraph because it's important.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full.
Yeah, that's Jack Smith, and I wanted to bring up this on the live stream. You can see me live in studio, The Morning Buzz. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Rumble, Twitter, and Facebook. Now, that was Jack Smith, and he was like, I encourage everybody to read this indictment. I have, and it reads like it was written by a college freshman who's big mad that Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016 and never got over it. Okay, so point is, third paragraph, this is important. He says that President Donald Trump had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even claim falsely that he won. He had the right to do that. But apparently, he's indicting him for it anyway. So he's indicting him. President Donald Trump, like every American here in the United States, right? We have the right to publicly say we do not believe the 2020 election was free and fair. That is our right as Americans. That is free speech. President Donald Trump did just that. And he's like every other American who has the right to speak publicly about that election being stolen. But they're indicting him for that very thing anyway. So this whole indictment, just in that third paragraph, just has crumpled. You have just proven my point here in your own indictment, Jack Smith. You idiot. So in addition to obstructing the January 6th congressional proceeding, I guess giving a speech at the ellipse is, how he obstructed justice. Wait a second. I thought you just said that he was able to speak publicly about it. Imagine if we could indict the DOJ. That would be great, wouldn't it? We could totally prove that they have engaged in this wide-ranging conspiracy to interfere with the 2024 presidential election, defund the DOJ. You guys have a great rest of your day. Be sure to go find me on YouTube. Just look up Kat Peterson 92.9. And I love you. I love you so much. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. See you again tomorrow.